Hello everyone, welcome to the much delayed first part of the episode proper for the band Screaming Females. Anyway, we'll start with the band's debut album, Baby Teeth. Released in 2006, it would be re-released in 2009 through Don Giovanni Records, and it was presumably self-produced as well. Now on the whole, Screaming Females don't have a lot of information that I haven't said already in the very brief history segment, and that is true for pretty much all of their back catalogue. It also makes me wonder which version of the album that I heard, but to be fair, I'm lucky enough to be listening to any version of the album. We start with the song Foul Mouth, and it's clear from the start that this band has quite a different spin on their chosen genre. We'll start in terms of the production, which is joyfully fuzzy, and somehow, despite that, it doesn't get obnoxious, even though the fuzz is all over the album's length. That is no more evident on any instrument than it is on the guitar, and by golly is Marissa's guitar work just absolutely gorgeous. Her solos are lovely, she has a nice drawl to her voice to back it up as well, and she rarely feels overbearing over the other two band members, who are also both great. That in itself is a great example of this album's sense of hard work, and this band's sense of hard work too, because you have to remember they had no producer for this except maybe themselves, they had no label at the time, and they really just had each other, and I'll be damned if I say that it doesn't pay off. The album's core structure is very catchy, and the fact that you can hear all of the instruments clearly really lends itself to that, and that is something I'll be bringing up for the future as well. And the lyrics are great too, covering things like toxic masculinity, animal cruelty, religious belief and modernism, and it's all done in a way that doesn't crawl up its own butt, which is nice and rare and very nice indeed. My favourite song goes to Electric Pilgrim. Baby Teeth is an appropriate name for a debut of this style, and those teeth definitely pack a lot of bite and charm that injects itself fully into the album. Next up is the band's second album, What If Someone Is Watching Their TV, self-released in 2007 and re-released for Don Giovanni again in 2009, and then re-released in 2011 on vinyl. It would again be self-produced. So yeah, I don't really have any background for this one, which makes sense in this case. I mean, it was only a year between albums, and I can only presume that there was more touring and doing local shows in the very short time between. It starts with the track theme song, no, not that one, and to be fair, it just sort of sounds like their first album, but maybe with better production. You know what? No, that's not a good summary, and I've still got a lot to say about it, so I'll do my best. Watching TV is a pretty good sequel to their debut, carrying the band's signature energetic sound and frenetic pacing that was on said debut. I mentioned the production too, and there's a lot of new things done here with more compression in places, and it all feels really organic and nice. And structuring wise, it's again the same sort of thing. It's fast, it's loud, it's brash, and it's easy to fall into, as well as being a joy to listen to, and the band's performances fit the mold of the sound quite nicely. And the lyrics and instrumentals are also fine if a bit familiar and samey, but I don't know, you see, I don't hate this album, I just feel like it doesn't feel too different from their debut. I mean, I get it, they cultivated a good loop on their debut, but maybe it's because this album wasn't out too long after that. I just feel like they needed more time, and a lot of this feels like cuts that didn't really make it onto Baby Teeth. But at the same time with this album, what we get is still really enjoyable, if on occasion a bit familiar in some areas. My favourite song goes to Fun. Watching TV is an enjoyable sequel with a good heart to it, but it just sort of beats the same as last time, so keep that in mind if this one interests you. It is still worth a go though, obviously. Next is the band's third album, Power Move. Released in 2009, it would be their first full one through Don Giovanni Records, and I couldn't find a producer, so let's just say that maybe it was the band once again. Maybe. So thankfully the band took a bit more time with this one, and you could argue that one of the reasons for that was them actually getting signed to a record label. Apparently there are very few growing pains with that process, as is evident from the album's opening song titled Bell. In a surprising contrast to the last two albums, this one already has a different feeling to its pacing, slowing down more to build up to certain points, and it's a change that really works. I did neglect to mention that for watching TV, that Marissa did add a yelpy scream to her vocal repertoire, which felt a miss last time, but I guess that I just apparently got used to it because it feels a lot more welcome here and it just fits in more naturally. And yet, even with the slow things tried on this one, it's still quite an eclectic album and it feels a bit more solidly put together than the last one did. The instruments complement that as well, with some genuinely exciting and interesting things tried so that the structure doesn't feel as repetitive as it did last time. It's nice that a lot of the guitar work still sounds great, but the production on this one is so slick and crisp that it gives so much time to the other instruments too. Especially that bass. Oh lordy, the bass on this album. The bass. The bass do that bass. The bass. There's even some good lyrical content again, covering things like abusive relationships, human cruelty and depression, once again sticking to the band's serious tone that matches up well with their music, and yeah, that is something that did appear on their second album, but I didn't bring it up because it didn't feel too different. Yeah, that's sort of that album's problem. My favourite song goes to Adult Army. Power Move is a big step forward for the band, experimenting more and feeling a lot better put together, in no small part thanks to their home record label. And lastly, for part 1, we reached the band's fourth album, Castle Talk. Released in 2010, it would come out through the same label and probably be produced by the same people. Probably. Once again, I don't really have a lot for this one, so we'll just start with the fact that this album is another one that's just a year apart from their last album, sort of fitting that we're ending part 1 with it in that case, I guess. The album starts with the song Laura and Marty, and right from the start it seems to be going down a slightly different route than the band's past 3 albums. It's still an enjoyable bit of punk-fueled indie rock, but in a lot of its parts it's a more measured and paced out album, not rushing into things as much as it did for the last 3. And I do appreciate that, as boggling as it is to consider since this is the band's 4th album and only about 5 years since they started doing full-length releases. Which begs the question of why they didn't do it with the first two albums, but I can only assume that's because they've got a label behind them this time to keep them in line. That seems to work out well with what we get, with the band taking a more measured out, balanced and organic pace to this album. That's true of the instruments as well, which focus more on how well they all gel together, all colliding nicely with each other to serve as a strong backbone for the album. And the production again does a good job of that, making the instruments feel bigger, like they're all trying to hit you as hard as they can at the same time, and it works actually. And again, there's some really good and realistic lyrical content with things about cheating, breakups, complacency, and isolation. So, good stuff there too. My favourite song goes to Normal. Castle Talk is a slightly sludgier affair for the band, but it's still a clean cut, it's still well performed, and it still has a lot of depth to it, so good. I can recommend this one. And that'll about do it for part 1. Join me hopefully tomorrow, or rather soon, for part 2, where I'll be covering their last 3 albums from Ugly to All at Once. And I want to apologise for this one taking a while to get done. Obviously, you sort of know the reasons why. But yeah, I'll get part 2 up of this as soon as I can. And as always, thank you for watching. You're awesome. Bye bye.